Hi everyone, welcome to this Wednesday's 6 p.m. Talk, which I'm doing every week, 6 p.m. Bali time, and very excited about today's talk, which is going to be about the benefits of yoga. So we're going to be exploring this today in more detail with journeyer and yoga teacher Bernd Windhofer, which I'm really excited about, who we will explore a little bit more in depth and then obviously answer any questions that you may have. So the intention of these talks is always to raise awareness on not only on topics related to our well-being practice, but generally mental health in general. So it's really to break the stigma around various topics, and basically to put our heads together and talk. And sometimes I do organize these talks just by myself. Other times I do it with a guest, a special guest, colleagues, people from various discipline in which they always have something related to wellness, mind and body, and how we can always get better, improve, find solutions, understand things a little bit better. So it's kind of really casual conversations that we're having here. So everything that's shared here doesn't replace in any way the fact that you might personally need some personal recommendations, or you might get the advice of a professional specific to you, perhaps in where you live in person as opposed to online. So this doesn't replace advice that is personal to you. So that's really important. So everything's shared here is based on my own clinical experience in the last 20 years of practice as a clinical psychologist, and of course that of my guests as well. And if you're struggling or suffering or anything, or you've got any questions or concerns, you can just message me. I'll really be happy to reply as I can, and of course refer you if needed. I also support people online if that's needed. So I'm just going to be allowing Bernd now to join in. I'm just waiting. Okay, he's gonna just join in right now, which is great. Just a second. Hope everybody's well wherever you are. And so this interesting topic. Hi, Bernd.
Hello. Hey, Jeremy. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
I've got a little dog on my lap. Pandora. 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 She's crazy. She's crazy. She just ate, so she's excited. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Great. So really good to have you here today.
Good to be here.
How's your day?
My day was brilliant. Very, very strange and wonderful and full of unexpectedness. So it was good.
Fantastic.
How was your day? How was your day?
It was really good, eventful. Always interesting things happen, and I always hear when different stories, and then part of a process for many people. Some of which actually people get better, and other people are at the early stages, so they're really struggling. Yeah. This is what I do every day. I mean, the days of the week, though, is being there for other people. But I do have my time to do my own mindfulness practices and my own yoga and things like that. So
good.
Yeah. So today is where the topic of yoga, I think, is something that a lot of people are curious about. Some people, many people who are already on their journey and in the process, others not. And I know that in my practice, I meet a lot of people who have no experience whatsoever of mindfulness. And so this is definitely an intrinsic part of my practice, is basically to inform people and then to encourage people and then teach them to a certain extent about these different practices. And yoga is definitely a really powerful reconnector, I would say, of the mind and the body, because we can get so caught up with so many things that we lose touch with ourselves, and we disconnect from the body. And I find that yoga is a wonderful, a very powerful, and yet at the same time easy way to ground yourself quite rapidly in some instances.
Yeah, very much so.
So hearing about your experience would be fantastic.
Well, I'm actually going to stir the pot a little bit, Jeremy, because I need to define yoga first. By the way, a few of you guys like Artista, hello Artista, joining in. I've seen him adding into the
Yeah.
call, which is great. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, we should define yoga, because what we have to understand, what most people call yoga today, it's just what's commonly called yoga, is only one of the 8 limbs of yoga, which is the asanas, the yoga postures. And the really funny thing is, in the ultra traditional practices of yoga that come from India originally, a long time ago, actually, it was not like that. Asana is one tiny, tiny drop in the ocean of yoga. So then we have to ask everybody, what is yoga? And that's why I always feel, everyone here, hi, Jeremy and I have been working together for a long time. We've been kind of running retreats together in the past. I've often come in and taught some of his wonderful clients some stuff. Bhatti, hello. They're my teacher. Well, that's nice of you. Hello. They're my student. So,
That's great.
yeah. So it's the reason that really I feel that Jeremy and I work well together, and really yoga works so beautifully with any other system of, hello Bogor, hello, that with any other system of yoga works well with therapies of any kinds and all sorts of things. The reason it works so powerfully is the original definition of yoga, which is from Patanjali. There's other definitions, of course, but this is the classical definition. And the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we don't know how old they are, to be honest. The traditional Indian view is that this text is about 6,000 years old. The modern scholarly view dates it more somewhere around 2,000. You don't really know. Is that Daria? Hello, Daria. So we don't really know.
Yeah.
But what we have to get is that either way, the definition of yoga is a very old one. And to quote the Yoga Sutras, the second and third line are crucial for the whole understanding of what yoga is. And they are, number 1, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Number 2, tara drashtuhu svarupe basthanam. And those 2 lines together mean yoga is the stopping of the fluctuations of the mind. Then we rest in our true nature. That's what yoga is. Yoga is not the quest for a washboard abdomen and the buttocks of a racehorse. Yoga is not putting yourself in certain positions that, may or may not feel good or uncomfortable. It's not just a mindfulness practice where you work with the body. Those things are all part of it. Sure, they're there, but that's not the point of them. The point of yoga ultimately is to stop those mental fluctuations, go under them. He's not saying stop the mind. He's saying stop the mental fluctuations. It's all your trauma. It's all of your wrong views. It's all of your issues that are kind of circulating around, chattering away and giving you a wrong direction in your life and putting you into bad situations. And what yoga is trying to say is, hey, there's another option. Who you truly are is underneath all this. And to get there, we need to find a way of stopping this madness and go deep into that ocean underneath. The subconscious, the unconscious mind, you could say, who you truly are, whatever you want to call it. And what the yoga tradition has beautifully created is a system that tries to work with every aspect of our lives in order to create that situation. So we're talking really about the 8 limbs of yoga. And there are many formulations of these, many versions. I usually just teach the most simplest form, which is in the Yoga Sutra. It's been expanded in others, been shortened in other texts. It's a bit of a flexible system, but the basic 8 limbs of yoga are very, very simple. We have, to begin with, a social and behavioral context. So the first 2 limbs of yoga, often called the yama and niyama component, are about how you live your life in the world, how you relate to others, looking at your behavior, looking at, are you someone who lies and steals? Are you someone who is honest? Are you someone who is, pardon me with this, but it's in the text, sexually unrestrained? Are you wild? Are you crazy? Are you getting yourself into trouble? Are you causing problems for others? Are you greedy? All these kind of things. We're asked to work with these parts of our lives. That's just a social level. We're then asked to set up a situation in the niyamas for ourselves where we are actually really stable. We start to clean up the mind. We start to, I often feel like a great therapist is fulfilling the first of the niyamas, which is shaucha, cleanliness. And it's not really talking about the body. I mean, it's so easy to clean the body. You don't need to be a yogi to clean the body.
You don't need to be a yogi what do you mean by cleaning the body?
People often misunderstand shaucha, which is the first of the niyamas, as just hygiene or
Hygiene.
yeah.
Okay.
Like that. But actually, what they really mean, what shaucha really means, actually, is it's partly that, but it's mostly mental and emotional hygiene.
Mm.
It's about not basically, and I hope people don't mind this. I'm pretty blunt in my language sometimes. It's not letting yourself remaining fucked up.
Yeah.
So you don't just sit there and you realize that you're really
Passive.
addicted to all these things and you're not happy, but you're like, it's okay, whatever. You just don't do anything about it. And a therapist can really help with that so much. They can help clean up the mess. They can talk you through, why do you think that? You know, what's going on here? How can we work with this? So that's, you know, so in a way, the whole niyamas are things like this. They're trying to get you to work with you. They're trying to set up a situation where you have a basic level of health in your life. You feel personally empowered. You feel good, and you can relate to others. I mean, that's really the beginning of the path of the yogi. But then is where yoga really starts to get very individual, because the third limb is asana, and that's the one everyone knows, yoga postures. And we get into the body, and like you said, one of the great benefits is you do really ground yourself. You are less stuck in the head. You're more, you know, boom, you're down. You're more able to handle things. I find that my regular asana practice really helps me feel grounded. It helps me feel like I can handle whatever life throws at me a lot more than if I wasn't doing it. It's not exercise, it's getting into the body. But then even then the story doesn't end, because what the ancient yogis were teaching is, hey, you know, the situation actually is we have to work on ourselves on all levels. Even just social and personal isn't really enough. You have to work with your body. Yeah. Next thing, and this is where the modern Western world has often issues with this one, although I can guarantee you from my personal experience, this is real. Although don't believe me, try it for yourself, which is pranayama, which deals with your energy, your prana, your chi, you know, all those things. Now, I'm not going to get into that today. Maybe we can talk it again another day, Jeremy, talk about prana, but if you like. But prana is a huge field, and it's basically to do with your energetic body. It's to do with, I mean, the teachings in the yogic tradition are very clear. A lot of the issues we face are there because there are certain energetic messes in the body. And we have to clean those up, not just on a physical or mental level, but there's a missing link, which is prana. And the techniques that are used to help do that are breath-based techniques. And I know you, Jeremy, talk a lot about the breath in your practice as a therapist. And the yogis always say, you have to. Yeah, the yogis always say, you have to. Without the breath, it's really hard to make some fundamental changes. And that's because the prana situation hasn't been sorted out. So that's that. And then you have, Dea, hello. And then you have the rest of the path. And so we've gotten to the fourth limb. Then we have limbs 5, 6, 7, and 8. And these are the really exciting limbs.
Limbs, I think it's just important to describe that limbs are like parts of the of a path. It's a path. It's a yogic path, right? So people understand what the word limb means. I mean, people who don't know about it. It's like the different stages, right? The 8 levels or stages.
The 8 stages of the
path, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, the metaphor I quite like is it's a bit like you're in a deep, dark hole or dungeon, and there's a ladder leading out, and you take one step at a time up that ladder. And the first limb is the first rung. The second limb is the second rung. And so you're kind of slowly climbing up those rungs until eventually you've gotten to the surface. And then you're in this big, beautiful landscape, and life is beautiful because you've traversed the lower limbs to get to the top. That's kind of the view of the yogic tradition. So the first 4 limbs that I've talked about so far are called the bahirangas. Anga means limb, and bahira means external. So the external limbs are basically working with your daily life, with your body. Energy is also seen as just external because you can manipulate it easily. But then we get to limbs 5, 6, 7, and 8. And these are the antarangas, the internal limbs. And these are meditative practices. And it's gradually deepening the path. So you have the 5th limb of yoga, which is pratyahara. And this is a fascinating one. It's often really badly translated as sense withdrawal. And what does that actually mean? I'm going to take you for a walk because Hamlet wants to go outside and pee. So while Hamlet pees, I'll walk and let him out. Hamlet, here you go.
Yeah,
Here you go.
okay.
Go outside. Have a nice pee. Off he goes. So the fifth limb of yoga is not really about withdrawing your senses. How do you do that? How does one withdraw one's senses? What it's more about is independence from your senses. It's usually we are totally reliant on what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we smell, what we taste. It's like this is our whole world. We rely on it. We want to get happy. We look outside for happiness. You know, maybe if I eat this cake, I'm going to be happy. Maybe if I cuddle that person, I'm going to be happy, you know, and so on. And the yogis have recognized for thousands of years this is not a path to happiness because you have to find happiness in here. Only then can the world ever bring you any joy. So it's a fundamental issue that we are always kind of out here, always out in the world and never here. We haven't sorted this stuff out. So how can we enjoy this? It's not possible. So the pratyahara limb is about learning to be less captivated by the world of the senses, to still experience the world of the senses, to still eat, make love, cuddle, sleep, all the things that you love to do, but not so much relying on it, being completely independent in yourself and joyful in yourself. And that whole process is a big process. You're learning how to stop externalizing your happiness.
Which is really difficult actually to do.
Yeah,
you know, because the senses are so powerful, you know, that it's so easy to be captivated by everything around us. It's difficult to separate. It's difficult to separate. So it really does require a level of awareness, understanding, perhaps even more importantly, intention, to go through such a process. It's not going to come just automatically and naturally.
No,
you know,
no.
Automatically, we're just drawn by our senses. We're captivated by everything around us. We're drawn by things that we call our reality. You know, the facts of life, the things that we have to deal with every single day, perhaps events that have happened to us that are really, really real. So it's difficult really to really, I guess as a first step, to really understand this. And second, to kind of really practice it, to kind of really bring yourself into that and to work on it. It's a process, right? It's
completely a process.
It doesn't happen like this, you know. It's
no.
Yeah,
that's
a long time, you know, to process.
Very much. That's why it's one of the limbs of yoga, because there's a whole set of practices around how we might do that. Just like there's practices around moving the body and working with your breath, there are practices around bringing the senses out of contact with the world around and bringing it, boom, inside.
Of course, and I suppose that's where the breath work comes in, or pranayama, the power of that, and then all the other aspects of yoga come in to actually assist, right? To be able to just go a little bit more, to really sense yourself and to become and to go within. Right?
Yeah, very much so. And actually, that's really the key, because the teaching really is that we don't start with limb 5, we start with limb 1. We start with how we relate to the outside world. Then we get to kind of clean up our basic states, mentally, physically, whatever. And then we begin to do some yoga asana to help move energy, to help kind of ground ourselves. And then we begin to work with the breath. And once that's been worked with, we can finally start to work with the practices that draw you more away from here and in here.
Yeah.
And once that's been done, that's where the really exciting path really takes off, which are the limbs 6 to 8. Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi, often translated not wonderfully, to be honest, as concentration, meditation, and what they usually translate Samadhi as ecstasy. It's not great. Dharana, concentration, isn't bad. Now, all three are actually just different ways of practicing meditation. They're all the same practice in a way. There's some caveats there. So you have the basic thing of, this is the meditation practice. Now your senses are no longer drawn here. We are here. We can finally meditate, you know. And the first thing is learning to, and this is quite strong language, I'm aware, learning to fix your mind on one object of your choice for as long as you want without distraction, like the breath, like a visualization or a mantra, a sound, you know, syllable in your mind, whatever you want to meditate on, or even an image of a figure that you idolize, or a tree, you know, or whatever. So the meditation practice, it's almost not important. It is, but not that important initially, what you do. But it's important that the first thing you try to do is really learn to stay with the object of meditation without distraction. Now, that's really hard to do if you haven't gone through the earlier limbs. It can be done, but it's very hard to do. Especially without limb 5, it's really hard to do. If your senses are still stuck out there, why are you trying to follow the breath with your mind? You're too busy thinking about, you know, the chicken burger you're going to get for lunch after your meditation, or whatever your bag is. You know, it's not going to work. So, but the really interesting thing is that when that process becomes more easy, naturally the next limb of yoga arises. So when you're really able to concentrate for a long time, we're talking a long time, not just 1 minute or 2. One traditional source gives us 3 hours. But, you know, it's a high bar. But don't worry about numbers so much. I mean, it could be less, could be more, but it's when you can, at will, stay with what you want to stay with. Your mind is no longer wandering. Then gradually, the mind stops having to focus on the object and it just rests on the object. And that's the 7th limb of yoga. I call it resting in awareness. Whereas the earlier I call focusing on awareness. Focusing on, resting in. Big difference. When you're able to just sit there and you're resting in the breath or whatever you're meditating on without any effort. That's meditation proper. That's dhyana. And the final of the 8 limbs of yoga has 8 various steps, but they're all in the same direction. The final of the 8 limbs of yoga, samadhi, I like to simply translate as absorption. So there's a complete sense of immersion. You're no longer outside the object of meditation looking in, you are inside. There's a wonderful metaphor in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, one of my favorite little few centuries old texts, where Swatmarama says, it's like oil and water being mixed. You can no longer separate them so easily. It's like, or another example in a different text, it's like warm water with salt added. Once you've stirred the salt in, you can't really break them apart. It's completely absorbed. That's what the mind is like. The mind becomes utterly absorbed in the object of meditation, and blissful states of ecstasy and pure joy arise. And only at that point does according to the yogis, is the mind truly capable of seeing through any of your delusions. You finally see, this is not what life is like. This is what life is like. And then your life is never the same again. That's really the whole path of the yogis. And we go through that path again and again in a way, and we don't leave behind the earlier limbs, but we just kind of add more and go deeper and play with different ways of working with them. But I guess what I'm trying to say here, and Jeremy, I'll let you talk and ask some questions in a moment, but I guess what I'm trying to say here overall, we must stop in the modern world thinking of yoga as just a bunch of stretches on a rubber mat. You know, yoga is a complete path to complete fulfillment in your life, and it has room for everything. So I encourage any of you who are interested just to do some reading, do some research, find a teacher who will teach you the whole limb system, not just yoga postures. And then you can start exploring this whole world. I mean, it's a beautiful world. It's a world that nourishes me every day, and it keeps me alive. I feel like it saved my life on multiple occasions. Stopped me sinking into a kind of ennui, you know, or lassitude, or kind of about life. Yeah. So there you go, Jeremy. Ask some questions. Or anyone else was asking questions, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing all this wonderful information. Very useful as well. I think you know, there's a lot of people who don't know much about yoga, and they feel very much that it's not something that they can do. There's many barriers there. You know, again, many misconceptions and things like that. For example, this is not something I can do. I'm not flexible enough. Or you have this idea that I have to do exactly like the teacher just did it, and I can't do that. You know, or it becomes like, oh, this is the solution, the quick fix solution to all my problems. But suddenly there's so many layers that we don't understand, and people don't necessarily take the time to want to discover something. You know, we're living in a world where people are maybe suffering. They're looking for a quick fix solution because maybe other people are offering that. But very quickly, they kind of discover for themselves the hard way, I suppose, through trial and error. You know, that basically what they were seemingly promised or under the illusion of some kind of a quick fix doesn't happen. And then basically, you know, they begin to search for something else. You know, everybody goes through a different process like that. But I guess there are some, because I've often hear people who've been to yoga or who've tried yoga, and let's say unfortunately there wasn't, I think the way the teacher shares the process is key,
Of
is
course.
fundamental,
Of
is
course.
fundamental. And so if you have a teacher, for example, who has one version of yoga but doesn't seem to really go into depth with it, then unfortunately that's going to be very limiting. And perhaps a person who goes to that class might feel, oh, that didn't really work for me, and then of course they just stop, or all that. Whereas
Very much so.
of course we know today, even though that it's a yoga is based on a science that's been around for years. As you said, it's like so long, we don't know when it first started, but thousands kind of. And we know today that because of Western science and research, although that science has already been there a long time, it's evidence-based. We know that people with mental, who are struggling with different, conditions, whether it's depression, whether it's trauma, whether it's various addictions or eating disorders or various conditions like this that are quite complex, that yoga has definitely an incredible part to play in one's process of recovery and of growth, and I would say transformation in one's life. And I think that's really a key word. I think that for many people, perhaps as you've kindly shared as well about yourself, it's transformed their life and saved them. For other people, maybe they went through it, but then they stopped in the process, or they didn't find that. There's so many paths to finding yourself in the end, right?
Yes, very much so.
It's a beautiful combination, to have if yoga at some point you thought that this wasn't for you, or that you tried it didn't work for you, or that you have this idea that you're not flexible enough, how about challenging that thought?
Totally.
Just challenging that idea in the end. It's an idea. We're filled with ideas and stories in our mind. Sometimes
very dangerous.
Very dangerous. Exactly. It creates a certain illusion of a reality that basically either hampers you, blocks you, sustains a fear, and doesn't really allow you to be able to grow and to expand and to go to deeper levels. And perhaps that's what you were mentioning here, in terms of maybe perhaps the second limb of yoga is basically delving into like the maybe concepts and your own realities. So it really ties in hand with most of kind of psychotherapy practices, in terms of allowing oneself to challenge their thoughts and to explore their thoughts. I have a question for you with respect to that. I know there's lots of people who've never done psychotherapy, or and went straight into yoga, maybe because they had a stigma around psychotherapy or psychology, or about mental health in general, and they just don't want to go in that direction. They prefer to find other ways, which doesn't mean it's the wrong way. It's just a way. And they find themselves perhaps in the process of yoga, quite disciplined, quite committed, but then they find themselves experiencing, sometimes after even the first time or a second time, very strong, powerful emotional outbreaks. And sometimes it can actually, from what I've seen for some people, it's kind of made their condition or situation worse, simply because perhaps it wasn't handled properly. What's your experience with that?
I mean, I've had a very positive experience as a practitioner. One of my strengths as a human, I would say, is I've always been quite emotionally intelligent. This has not been a problem for me. That's one of my talents. I've had many other non-talents, things that I struggled with, like an open mind, and in the past, not so much now. There was anxiety issues and all sorts of things. But emotionally, at least, I've always been very clued into how I felt. So, for me, I found that when which I did from the very beginning, experienced strong emotional content through practice, it was a relief, because that emotion showed me something that was stuck. It's like, wow, actually, I'm crying here, and I'm in this bloody yoga pose. Why am I crying? And then I stop and just relax, and suddenly I realize, wow, I'm crying because this. and even a memory turns up, then I can work with it. You know, and back especially in the early days, I was just occasionally seeing a therapist. I haven't done so much recently. I probably could use one, but, but you know,
yes.
I really wasn't so much. So back then I was, and I was able to bring some of that to that therapist. But actually, when I first started, I wasn't seeing anybody, but therapy-wise. But I was still able to process it because pretty early on I learned that what I need to do when emotional content comes up is experience it, relax with it, allow it to move through me, and often it carries with it a kind of release. It shows you something about your life that you need to see. Many people aren't quite able to handle that, especially if you're conditioned in a far more rigid, strict situation where you think, if I have a strong emotion, it must be suppressed. It's not cool. This isn't me. I'm not like this. Why am I angry? I can't be angry. I'm a good, peaceful person. I see that all the time. People get angry doing forward bending because it's like, okay, obviously something in there that you need to get out. So, I mean, those of you here who are watching this who haven't had this experience and you end up having it, what you need to really do is learn to just allow the emotion to move through you. And if it's a really strong, completely discombobulating emotion, you may need to seek some help. And please seek some qualified help. Don't just go and see, you know, the lovely hippie with flower in the hair, yoga teacher. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not that way inclined, but nothing wrong with that. Who seems to have the answers to all your problems and hasn't studied any behavior, hasn't studied any human, psychology of any kind, doesn't really know what to say. It's dangerous. I myself, I mean, I'm widely read, but I'm not a qualified mental health practitioner. If you came to me with a big trauma, I'd have to pass it to someone else because it's not my field of expertise. So seek someone. If it comes up, if it's really strong, seek help. And there's so many ways you can do that. Jeremy is wonderful, but even more than Jeremy, other than just Jeremy.
There are many others. Exactly.
There are many ways, and if finances are issues, there are very low-cost options. At least get the ball rolling. A system that I went through myself, I'm sure you've heard of, Jeremy, is Internal Family Systems, IFS, which is a wonderful system I worked with. And I learned that first. Later on, no, at first with the book, and I got a long way with the book called Self-Therapy. So there's many ways that you can really work with all this stuff, but you have to figure out if this is so strong that it takes you over. Practice itself may not be enough, especially if you're working with a teacher who's only trained in teaching you the postures of yoga. Because as I laid out in the earlier part of the first 20 minutes of this time together, yoga is a path, and the stuff we're talking about, me and Jeremy here, is really fitting within the full path of yoga. And I have to be blunt here. Probably 99% of teachers don't teach it. There might be little bits of it, but they don't really teach the whole thing. So I can think of probably 5 teachers in the world who do. So, let's not mince any words here. So if you really, really can't find one of those teachers, they're hard to find. I mean, I'll try my best, but I'm also a long way from the end of the path. If you can't find a teacher who isn't able to offer you that, seek help outside from someone who's a professional in whatever you are struggling with. So the yoga asana can help you unlock the trapped feeling of an emotion. And then a good therapist, for example, can help you work with that feeling. Or sometimes even a friend if they're really known you for a long time.
Yeah, to make sense of what's really going on, really. What's happening to them. Absolutely. And for that is really about breaking the stigma around mental health. Breaking perhaps feelings of feeling shy or shame that's often associated, with, admitting or acknowledging that there's something that's really hurting me from the inside. So we don't have to pretend that everything's okay. I mean, if something's not okay and if something is really overwhelming me, that there's actually the strongest thing one can do is actually reach out to the right person who will be able to assist you in the process, so that if you're actually going down a yoga path and you're really going through that process, then you will be able, it will help you to do that more efficiently and to grow and to expand, right?
Yeah.
So this is really the key, the most important thing, really.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think we're soon out of time, but It's just, remember, your task as a human is to live well, to learn to love, to learn to be kind, to learn to live your life in the way that really makes you feel like, yeah, this is my life. And whatever modalities you use to help you achieve that aim, great. Yoga is my primary modality, but it's full form, not the yoga postures. That's one little bit of it. Maybe this is not yours. Maybe your home base is something else. But yoga can help you in that direction. Maybe it's not for you anyway. But you have to, the first thing you need to do is get clear. What's holding me back from living this life that makes me feel like my whole body is tingling with excitement every time I wake up? This is possible. Why is it not happening? What are you doing? What can change? Nadia, I disagree. You say absolutely it's not always possible. Of course it's always possible. Why would it be possible? Of course it's possible. If it's not possible, there's a block somewhere. And it's not a bad thing. It's feedback saying, hey, something's at the moment not quite working well. Let's look at that and see if we can work through it to get back to the feeling of, yes, you're going to be some days down. Some days you're going to be happy, whatever. But what doesn't change when you really feel like life is cooking as it needs to is an underlying feeling of path, of purpose, of direction, and of fulfillment. Even on the bad days, that's still there. That's what you don't lose. And for that, you need some help, whether it's with a person like Jeremy and like a good therapist, or whether it's a path like yoga, or some of the Buddhist traditions, or the mindfulness movement, whatever you like. Oh yeah, we all try. But I still feel like it is possible. And I don't believe it's not possible. If I believe it's not possible, I think I've become pretty depressed. And I've seen students go through the most horrific times. I've gone through some very challenging times. But even in those times, the sense of fulfillment and joy, kind of hiding just under the surface, even while the person is crying. Underneath, there's a feeling of, this is my path. Life is worthwhile.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. This is really valuable and super important, even just like kind of a reminder to talk about these important things, is to give hope, but also to know that no matter what we're struggling with, that there's that it's possible to transform. It might be very difficult, yes, for sure. We all have our struggles. You know, I don't think there's a human being that doesn't. I mean, it's kind of a school of life in some respect. You know, and we cannot compare one suffering with another. It's like our suffering is legit to what we're going through, and there's a possibility for transformation. Exactly like what you shared. You've been through a lot, and you are a witness to your own possibility. I'm the same, even myself. You know, as a practitioner in my field, I've also been through difficult struggles in my life, and I am where I am today because I made that possible. And I think that is, that's evidence that it's possible for absolutely everybody, no matter what their circumstances are. And even though you might be struggling in that specific place, there are opportunities and options to be able to move things around. But it does take a leap of faith. It does take you stretching your hand out to all the options out there and to allow another hand to kind of grab your hand and then to assist you in your process. So we can't just sit down and just wait like this, you know, otherwise, of course, what can we do? You know,
of course.
You know? All right.
Wonderful. Okay, Jeremy.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful. Yeah, great chatting with you.
Joining in, feel free to, if anything that I said, you know, either offended you or got you excited or brought some questions out, just send me an Instagram message or find me in one of the other social medias, whatever, and ask. Go the same for Jeremy. Just, you know, ask anytime, anything you want to know. Yeah. See.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I just want to quickly mention that this is the end of today's talk. The next talk will be next Wednesday. Please, exactly as Bernd has said, if there's any questions, any comments, any concerns whatsoever, just feel free to message us, and that's it for now. So be well wherever you are, and thanks, Bernd. We'll be in touch again soon.
Take care.
All right. Hopefully this was super helpful and insightful to everybody here. Okay, bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.